Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown, your host from horns247.com. Very excited today to be joined by I call him the Mojo Spectacular, all-time leading tackler in Texas football history. I mean, he doesn't have the Fu Manchu anymore, but he is the one and only Britt Hager. Pride of Odessa, Permian, baby. Britt, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be on. And, when you asked me to do this, it's kind of reflecting how long we've known each other, right? Over probably 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And one thing I always loved about you're kind of the only reporter I know in this area for the Longhorns to go after the stories that other reporters just wouldn't go after. And you did. So I've always admired that about you. And I'm so happy to be on here with you.
Well, I appreciate that. I tell, folks, I'm either loved or hated by Texas fans, and probably both by all parties. I think people who've hated me at one time ended up loving me at another time because of that very fact that I would write the stories that they should want to know about. But I appreciate that, Britt Hager. Britt, I'm going to ask you a little bit about your thoughts about this Texas football team, but you're also an accomplished businessman, entrepreneur, and we're going to talk about this new age, lightning fast business, the Web3 world that you've entered into, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Britt, I always trust your opinion, especially when it comes to the defense and what you're seeing, because you were just one of the most instinctive, best linebackers I've ever seen play college football. And of course, you went on to an NFL career with the Philadelphia Eagles. You played for Buddy Ryan. You've had an unbelievable football life. But, we saw the defense take a big step forward last year under Steve Sarkisian. Jaylan Ford, playing the position you played, probably should have been the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year with all the tackles, all the plays he made, big plays. But and he's back. But give me your thoughts about what you saw from the Texas defense last year and kind of what you're hoping to see this year.
Well, they did take a step forward last year, which is nice, right? And it takes leaders like a Ford to do that, and that's one thing I love about him. He is a very, very good linebacker, and we're very fortunate to get him back for one more year. And so he has a great opportunity to lead the defense in the last year of Texas being part of the Big 12, right? And so when I went to the spring game, that's one of the things I was kind of reflecting on, right? How, things change, right? We're going into this last year of this conference, which, last few years has been tough for us, right? And you've got some good teams in this conference, and so didn't they play football differently? It's a wide open offense, right? And so to stop these offenses, right, is that these defenses, you've got to get turnovers. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's about the turnover game, because they just score so many points, right? And one thing I'm hoping to see is pressure on the quarterback and turnovers. I mean, because you stop a possession in this league, the more possessions you stop, by that you win. If you don't, you don't, you lose. And your offense got to score points, right? Offensively, in this league, you got to score points, and if you don't do very well either. So I do think with the defense we have, I think they're capable of having turnovers, capable of getting after the quarterback. They're growing up. I mean, it's I think they've got a swag about them, which I love. It's always good for defenses to have swag, right? And so I'm excited to see what they're going to do this year.
Yeah, Buddy Ryan, he loved for you all to have some swag, right?
I tell you what, there's no better person to really talk about swag than Buddy Ryan, right? And I had some great ones: Buddy Ryan, Bud Carlson, the Steel Curtain. So I've got to, in defensive line, I've got Jeff Fisher at one time was, in that league before he became a head coach, and so I've been around the good ones. And so it's, defense is important, right? And it just changed. The game has changed so much, right? And so over the course of the time, and really in today's world, it's a sack, it's the turnover, right? You get those two things, and backing us is how many tackles do you have, right? they run the ball, 90% of the time, unless we played Houston. At University of Houston, they had the run to shoot, but outside of that, it was a ground game. Right now, it's the air game, and hopefully your running backs get a couple of big pops. Right, they hit and then get a couple of big pops, and that's kind of the world. That's kind of, especially Big 12. That's what they're about. So.
Well, you had 499 tackles in your Texas football career. That's probably a record that's never going to be broken because of what you just said, that when, the era you were playing in was a ground game, it was option, it was, the, kind of the end of the wishbone, but it was still prevalent. I mean, when you faced Oklahoma, you were playing the wishbone.
Yeah. I mean, unless, football converts back to that, right? Things repeat history sometimes. I don't know if that history will ever be repeated, but it's going to be tough because you just don't have enough chances, right? And then, people rotating now, and, people play differently. I mean, you got, safeties playing linebackers, and, it's just a different world. But unless they go back to that type of wishbone and ground attack, it's going to be tough.
Well, I want to get your opinion because last year the defense was the turnaround story. The year before, it was not. It was one of the worst statistical defenses Texas had. And of course, it was Pete Kwiatkowski's first year as defensive coordinator. People were like, what on earth is going on? What did you see on the field last year that told you, okay, they have made these adjustments? Why did they make the jump that they made last year defensively?
I think a lot had to do with leadership, right? Because look, you can have schemes out there, but you can scheme anybody and put yourself in the right position and study. But at the end of the day, you got to want to, right? And especially on defense, man, it's me. At the end of the day, it's me versus you, right? Can I beat you or not, right? And that's the mentality, because you're reacting, right? Because you're a step behind when the ball snaps. Everything's a reactionary. You react and read, and then you have to process things quickly, right? And so I think that last year, what you saw a group of young men that came together and said, look, we're gonna get behind our coach. I think Gary Patterson probably had some stuff to do with it, because he's a great defensive mind. I'm sure behind the scenes he did what he was supposed to do to help.
Yeah, he was game planning. He was the one game planning.
Yeah, I mean, and but it's confidence, right? It's like when I went into a game with Buddy Ryan, David McWilliams, he was my coordinator back at Texas, or the great coordinators. When you go in a game, you're comfortable with the game plan, right? So that's first. But the second thing you got to be comfortable with is the changes you make during the game, right? And so your confidence in, hey, look, you're getting the right changes to do. And so those two things have to happen. So I think last year, what you saw they were prepared going into a game. The players are confident in it, and then and they were making, I don't know what happened during the game, but I'm sure they were making good adjustments during the game to get the outcomes they got. So I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, athletes, everybody said, well, we're getting better at. Look, Texas always has good athletes. I mean, it's like the rankings and all that. Who knows who's one or two time you get here and all that. But look, we've always had good players. It just takes a group of kids, young men, to have leaders that come together and they do a good job of playing and like each other, playing with each other, and getting after it. And we saw that last year.
Yeah, and I'll say that about Steve Sarkisian. He's built a good culture in that locker room. Those players like each other. They seem to, they're staying at Texas. They're not getting in the portal. And we know that when you have a lot of talent and it's crowded, that guys tend to leave if someone can offer them a NIL opportunity somewhere else. But I want to ask you this, Britt, because you said you watched the spring game, and there's a kid number 0 who's come in, Anthony Hill. He's a freshman. He knifed through the line a couple times. He had a sack. He's apparently all spring been, ripping the ball out. He's rushed the passer. I don't know I'm getting a little excited about number 0, Anthony Hill, the freshman, the top linebacker in the recruiting class of 2023. I don't want to overcook the grits here, but I'm just. What did you see in that spring game that gave you a little glimpse or of positivity?
Well, I mean, it's the first step, right? And so when you see that either you have it or you don't. That's especially when it comes to pass rushing or penetration, right? Either you're incredible at anticipating, right, or you're fast switch, right? And so you've got to, and it's hard to teach that, right? And so now with that, right, we'll see when you get into game planning and the things where you got to take care of the responsibility first before you react and use your talent, right? We'll see how that works. See if that does slow him down, right? And how the coaches will use a talent like that. How much responsibility they give him or don't give him doesn't mean he can't handle responsibility. It just that some of these guys who have talent like that, you want to give them much freedom and limit them so they can, so you can have their talent really be shown. So spotlight on it. So it's exciting. It's good to have those type of young men on your team, right? And because it makes everybody else's job a little bit easier, especially those DBs. They like that.
Oh, yeah. They like that pressure. All right. We'll take a quick break here on the Flagship Podcast with Britt Hager, the all-time leading tackler in Texas football history. And if you're watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we will roll on. But Britt, I want to last question on the Texas spring football. You mentioned it. We're coming into the last year of Texas being in the Big 12 before they move on to the SEC. The way that Texas has been recruiting 10 starters back on offense, you got to replace Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. That's a big deal. But the defense has experienced leadership back at every position. What are reasonable expectations, if there are such a thing for Texas fans, going into 2023?
Well, that's good, right? I mean, my goal is my expectation is one expectation: win the Big 12. Period. I mean, get to the playoff, right? I mean, UT should be that, and I know that the coaches, I know the athletic department, the alumni, right, donors, sponsors, that's what they expect. I don't expect anything less. So my expectations is that, until they prove me wrong, or us wrong, that's my expectation. So, and it would be really nice to close out the Big 12 with being Big 12 champions. That's for sure.
That's right. They closed out the Southwest Conference as conference champions and actually went in and won the first Big 12 title in 1996 with that incredible win over Nebraska. All right. So, Britt, I mentioned it. You are, of course, a Texas legend on the football field for the Longhorns, but you're also an accomplished businessman. You've been involved with companies like Mattress Firm, Pack Rat, Whataburger, and now you're in the Web3 world. You've started a company, monsterfanclub.net is where everybody can go check it out. But this is the Web3 world. We're talking NFTs, but I want you to explain it to idiots like me. What because you have Michael Taff as one of your testimonial endorsements. This is an NIL opportunity for student athletes. So talk to us about Monster Fan Club.
Well, I appreciate you asking. A few years ago, Brecken, my youngest, which I think people well know Brecken, that when he said to give up the football, two things he wanted to do is get into acting, and he wanted to explore crypto. And I said, well, acting is probably the hardest profession you probably could choose. And number two, what the heck is crypto, right? And so what happened during the COVID, right? Everybody's kind of locked down. So what I decided to do, so just, we're all together, let's learn something new. So I started learning the process of what all that world meant, right? And because in the 80s, right, when the world Web 2 was coming to deal, I was playing football and all, so I missed that movement. So when I started looking at this Web3, I said, look, this next generation of transferring platforms, I want to be a part of it, right? And then what was nice is at the same time, all this NIL stuff started happening. So, well, how can I bring these two worlds together to help the space? Because as we know, the space is gigantic. As we know that the Big Ten has signed a new TV deal, $7 billion. Now it's twice the size of the National Hockey League. You think about it, SEC hasn't signed their new one, ACC, who knows what's going to happen with the Big 12 and the Pac-10. But once they get all that done, because just the media contracts right now, just the media on those four conferences is about $1.5 billion a year. And that will go up with the new contract. So you're talking about a big market. And then with NIL, it's kind of the starting point of what, man, hey, let's figure this out, where you can put value where the value needs to go, right? And so we're all here kind of figuring this world out, figuring out what the current regulations and understanding what the Supreme Court said when they ruled in 2019 on this. So as we're doing this is, basically Web3 is a platform the athletes can come to, and I call FADs, fans, alumni, donors, and sponsors, which is different than professional sports, right? You're just fans, right? But in college world, you've got alumni, you got donors, right? And so it's a different attachment, right? It's a different following. That's the reason this, college sports is what it is in America. And one thing you don't want is to kind of screw that up, right? And so, but how do you work within the confines, what's given to you? And so I thought this would be a good platform to do. And so it's pretty easy that we have, artists around the world to create some NFTs or raps or PFPs or, avatars, and it gives you access to things that you're able to access with the athletes. And you get to interact on a blockchain. It's no different than interacting with an app, right? It's just a different way of doing things. And so that's growing. We're in the infant stages of it. And so to access our webpage, you got to have what's called a Coinbase wallet or a MetaMask wallet. Now, people don't understand that world. They will not know what those companies are, but the people that do will. And you just go to the browser, you click, MoshFanClub.net, and you just follow instructions to make your purchase. And follow along with Michael Taft. So it's no harder than that. I mean, and as we progress, you can use a credit card or whatever and have access. And so those things are coming fast. And if you're interested, really Web3 is just a way to move information. Ultimately, those terms will start disappearing in the marketing world, and you'll be able to interact as you do, but you'll be able to do more things, cooler things, more engagement, more stickiness. I mean, as the marketing world calls. And so I'm excited. I mean, it's a great place to bring sponsors together, great place to bring athletes together, great place to bring fans or fads, as I call them, together. And so I'm excited about it. And Michael is our first test. We did an MVP. And think about it, it's the first of its kind anywhere in college sports. So UT now, you have that whole commercial out there, right? That, hey, we did something first, in this space. And so these NFTs that we got out there, there'll be collective items because it'll be the first of its kind. And so I'm excited about being a part of that and doing it. And I appreciate you asking for it. But also, another reason I got involved, because the world of college sports is going to go through what's called collective bargaining in these next few years. There's a lot of posturing going on. The reality is there are only about 70 people that's ever done one, from the scratch. And that was us back in 1994 with the NFL collective bargaining agreement, which now is a standard all around all the professional sports. And so with the courts and with law, there's precedents now. So there's things that, if you haven't ever been through it, don't take it lightly. And that's what I'm out there when I'm able to use my experience to help behind the scenes, because there's not very many that went through it, right? And all the same stuff I'm hearing. Hey guys, I heard that back in 1993, 1992, right? I mean, that doesn't matter. These things what matter, and this is what has to happen to move the business along of college sports. And so I'm excited about being part of that as well.
So when you talk about collective bargaining, put that into, tell us what you think is going to play out between student athletes and the NCAA. I mean, paint the picture for us in terms of what this will look like for student athletes and how this will come together.
Well, here's the thing is I'm writing a piece on my Twitter at Britt Hager 60 and at MFC Web3 on Twitter. It's a 10-part series I'm calling it the soil of college sports, right? And so if you look at soil, you have to have three main ingredients to work. You have to have water, sun, and nutrients, right? For it to thrive. And I think it's most of us who are in the football world watched the Super Bowl last year. We saw a beautiful field, we saw a beautiful setting, but then the players went crazy. They called the field slip and slide, right? Because, you had the most, talented and long groundskeeper did a lousy job at the biggest stage, on the biggest stage, right? And that's kind of where, college sports is at right now. It looks pretty and all these things, but the soil is probably not very fertile right now, and it's not very solid, right? Because there's ways it can go. And my argument is this: that there's got to be three components to it. It's got to be the athlete. It's got to be the athletic department. The athletic department. It's got to be the collectives. If you take one of those out of the mix, right, then your path is going quickly to club sports and college sports. You don't really want that at the end of the day. So when you talk about collective bargaining agreements, right, you're not really talking about labor. You're talking about agreements of three parties need to come together. So you need three parties to come together. You need lead one, which is the Association for Athletic Directors. They need to start talking to the executive directors for all these players associations that are popping up because the Supreme Court said, hey, you need those, right? And so these associations are popping up. Then the collectives need to get organized. There's about 156 of them out there. Going back and forth. 32 of them went to the 501(c), which you got to put those to the side because those are safety nets for the schools, but they do nothing really for the players, and you're just asking your FAD for more money, right? And so on top of what they're already giving, and so you got to figure this world out, this world. So you need three of them to come together and talk about 5 categories. We'll solve about 80% of the problems. And when you get the right people and people you recognize to start talking, right? And so, in today's world, everybody wants to text and all these things, but no, you got to physically sit in a room and talk to them, make sure you got the correct representation, right? And so there's 5. So you got to talk around eligibility, the portal, right? What I call NIL plus. You got to talk around Title IX and the Olympic sports, right? And then the last page is this whole marketing agent stuff that's out there. So these things need guidance around them, right? But you got to have the right parties at the table, right? You just can't NCAA no longer say, look, I'm gonna put these rules out on the portal without the input of the athletic department, without the input of the players, right? That's the Supreme Court says you can't really do that anymore. And so I think with the new person, Charlie Baker at the NCAA, I think that there's a chance now because you have a new guard, you have a new thing. I know that, through the back channels, he's going to start having those conversations, right, with those type of people. So that's exciting because that's when stuff really starts to happen. And when you have those, and then we'll start moving where value, what I call value right now, because you can't call it compensation, right? Because you start talking about compensation, then you have to start, then you go down a path of W-2s and all that, and you remove amateurism, right? And so one thing, you can't really do that because that'll change the game forever. So, but there's ways to do it, and with new technology and compliance and auditing and all these things are coming along. There's things happening. The great thing about America, there's great innovators, right? And one thing what's happened since 2019, I'm talking to different collectives around the country and looking at a bunch of different things that people are doing, right? And it's exciting. I mean, because everybody's trying to figure this out, right? And when you talk, because if we don't figure it out, there's about a lot of people believe that we're on a real path to go to clubs, right? And for me, I don't want that. I mean, and there's a lot of us that want. I want to keep the amateurism. I want the athletes to be focused on their school. I want their athletes to be focused on their sport, and all this other curricular activity. It's great they can do it, but it's time, right? It's time management. And so So as we know, who people who've been through college sports, right? We know how demanding school is and how demanding the sport it is to be your best, right? And so they add extra pressure and time to these athletes. It's great that they have it, but the reality is really how much time and effort can they give to do something, right? And and it's great. It's also opened the door for sponsors, come in and say, now, hey, we got a doorway to come in and figure this out, where before they didn't. So those are good things, right? But the main thing is everybody you talk to, it's a wild, wild west. There's no transparency. They just had a 5 or 6 member on the house on the Hill 2 weeks ago with NIL. So there's a lot to do. But the biggest problem I see right now is that athletic departments are not talking to the players' associations. The collectives are not talking to the athletic departments. And NCAA is, he's going to make his way around and make those conversations. But once they do that, you got the 3 points and you talk about those 5 things, then things will start getting done. But if that doesn't happen, nothing's really going to get done. And it's probably going to be on a path to going to clubs, which is not good for anybody.
Well, and Charlie Baker, you mentioned him, the new president of the NCAA, former governor. Right. You're based on what you're seeing from him, you're feeling like he understands the problem. Whereas before, Mark Emmert he wanted a hands-off approach. I don't want to regulate NIL because I don't want another lawsuit coming at the NCAA. Your sense is Charlie Baker understands the landscape.
Well, I mean, I think he's taken literally what Justice Kavanaugh said, right? Hey, we got to start talking, because for them not to go under any more judicial pressure, they got to have these conversations, right? To come up with, because if you have agreements in place, then you can have labor peace, right? Then the courts are not going to mess with it because you have agreements, right? I mean, they don't mess with the NFL anymore, right? The NFL and the players, they take care of it in their system, right? The college world, you need to have a extra person, which is collectives. Now, a lot of people say, coaches, well, I don't want alumni, paying off players. And yeah, look, you're going to have bad actors, right? There's always bad actors. But the problem is you can't have amateur sports without that piece. It doesn't exist. And so wait, I don't care how you slice it doesn't exist, right? So you have to come together in that area. Those 3 have to come together, come up with these agreements, and they will, right? I mean, look, most alumni don't want people tampering. They just want to, hey, what's the playing field? What can we do? How can we help, right? Just like the athletic departments, right? It's funny is the number one request for the athletic department going into this year, guess what it was? They all want a COO. These ADs now want a chief operating officer, right? Because they know what's coming down the pipe. They know that, how they budgeted and managed in the past, they have to change that because they can't do that way anymore because the landscape is changing, right? And again, it's an elephant, right? So you got to take an elephant one piece at a time, right? And so I think the easiest piece to start with everybody to come agreement on and how to is the media dollars. Now, there's some complications in that, right? Because UT doesn't own their media rights, right? Learfield owns it, right? And so you have challenges out there because how the old system was is that these things over the next year are going to have to change, and they will change because the court's going to step in one way or the other. And then you got the playoffs coming down the pipe, right? So which is good. So you have backstops, right? You have things, look, we got to get things done. And I think and you got some new blood with Mr. Baker come in. You've got these, player associations popping up, and I think lead one, I know of Tom, he's reaching out. He understands what's coming down and he wants, they all want labor peace. They want understanding, but I don't know how you can governor with one, NCAA, like coming down on this and this and this, but they get no input or agreement from the other sides, right? And look, in that 2019 ruling, if just people go read it, right? If you just go read it, you're going, the Supreme Court spanks NCAA pretty hard, right? Because it's just not right. I mean, it's just not how we do things in America, right? That we got to move past that and move on. But here's the great news. College sports is at a great spot. It's no different probably where professional sports was back in 1994. It's now what we do with it is what the people do with it. And I think that you get these three groups together, you talk about these 5 topics, you hammer out agreements around these topics, and guess what's going to happen? You're going to see a great institution. You're going to see things move forward. Think about it. When the NFL decided to do it in 1994, the salary cap was $34 million. Guess what? This year, in 2023, it's $220 million. It's a 6 times return. I mean, it's incredible. Think about where college sports is in 40 years from now, where it's going to be if it's done right. Now, if it's not, it's going to be, you don't want college sports to become a club, because now you really got to compete with NFL, NBA, and we're seeing these new leagues out there, XFL, and I don't think they're going to do very well, right? I mean, it's just hard to go up against when you get into the free marketplace. It's incredibly hard. So this world that college sports has created, it needs to stay. Look, things need to change. It needs to be work within the rules. But you know what? There's enough smart people out there. There's enough technology to do things and get things accomplished. You just got to get the right people in the right room. Like Gene Upshaw. Gene Upshaw was our player rep, and he's he's probably one of the great visionaries of the sport of football, especially sports. But what was interesting is at that time, back when I got in the league, there was other people trying to start different player associations, right? But what happened is when Paul Tagliabue recognized Gene, no, this is the guy I'm going to not negotiate with and start to talk to, is when really stuff started to happen. And so that has to happen in football. These, the collectives, the athletic department, and the players got to get their representations, and these guys got to be recognized each other, say, this is where we're going to get things done, and this is what's going to do. And then if it's the NCAA or if it's another Power 5 ruling conference, then it makes that world as a commissioner a lot easier to rule and to stay out of legalities, right? And so I believe
that gets us back to leadership and the people who can sit at that table and command the respect of not only their constituents, but of the other parties involved. And that's been the $1 million question. But Britt, I want to get back to Monster Fan Club because I want people to understand, and we're using Michael Taft because you have Michael Taft. So if I go to monsterclub.net and I want to buy, Michael Taft, tell me what I'm buying when I go to monsterfanclub.net.
Okay, so how do you do it? There's a couple of steps you got to do if you don't have what's called a crypto wallet. So there's one's called Coinbase and the other one's MetaMask. That's the two biggest ones. Now there's a lot of other ones out there. So what you have to do is either download that on your browser on your computer or download as an app on your phone, right? You go through all those instructions, and once you have the wallet, you move Ethereum. Don't worry about Bitcoin and all the other coins. You move Ethereum over, and you hold that in your wallet. Then what you do, you go to the browser, you click the browser, you put monsterfanclub.net in it, and you click purchase, right? And then it'll connect, and then it buys the NFT. So what the NFT does, you get a random NFT, which is what we designed it to, what's called the degens out there of the world. Because what happened is the sports world fans don't really understand NFTs, but the degens do. They buy billions of dollars a year on the open market around the world. So our NFTs are that artwork you see. But what it does, it allows you, once you buy it, you get access to our Web3 platform where Michael, we're going to follow Michael. He's going to do video updates and things of Michael's life, right? And what he's doing, how he's going into the summer, and how he's getting prepared this last season of that, and also talk about his challenges, being on the honor roll, the struggles of, being a walk-on, earning a scholarship, right? I mean, he's kind of been in that world, right? Kind of,
and he was the official visit whisperer of Arch Manning.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's already got a cult following just because of that, right? Which is pretty cool, right? But when you get to know the young man, that's the great thing about influencers and the way of doing this model. It gives the fans a way to engage in a more intimate way with these athletes, that they'll get to know these and why that Arch was drawn to a guy like Michael, right? And was part of the decision coming here, right? like no different than when I came on campus, right? You look at your teammates, and that's a part of your decision. Hey, do I want to spend 4 years with these people, right? And so he saw something in Michael, along with other things that he decided to come here. So all those things will be covered, through the year. And the only way to get access to it, you got to purchase, and most proceeds goes to Michael, right? And his NIL talking, and so we're gonna roll out a bigger plan across multiple colleges going into the fall, and we're excited about it. We're excited about able to participate in this space and help bring change in a balanced way. I mean, in a balanced way to this new NIL world and where college sports is going.
Well, it's I'm fascinated by it. I know this is a great opportunity for our audience to introduce themselves to the.
Hey, look, I got gray hair. I started this 2 years. I mean, look, I got in it 2 years ago. I'm not the sharpest tool in the tool shed, right? And so the thing is, it's what's great about 2 years ago. Yeah, it's pretty difficult, right? But today, the advances, because it's moving so fast. I mean, it's no easier than having an E-Trade or having an app on your phone, right? I mean, it's and soon you don't even care if it's Ethereum, blockchain, Web3, all that stuff will go away. Just click and point. Hey, here's my Twitter address, here's my email, and you go, right? Here's my credit card, go, right? I mean, so that's all moving really quickly and fast. The thing about blockchain, it's just a ledger. At the end of the day, it's just a better accounting system. It's a better way to comply and to audit.
Well, everybody needs to get over to monsterfanclub.net and make sure you're following Brit at Brit, Britt Hager, Britt Hager 60.
Right.
On Twitter and MFC Web numeral 3.
Correct.
Okay. All right, folks. For you crypto heads out there, you're probably already there. But for those of us learning the crypto world, what's
interesting, like you look at some competitors out there changing to all these ratings, NIL ratings, and all this stuff, right? Look, there's a change coming, right? And it's coming, and people on the back end, the engineers, all the guys are back there. They always move before the rest of us move, right? So there's this migration going on as we speak, right? And so all this stuff's going to happen quickly, and so I'm just glad to be on it and be on this wave and just try to use my experiences to help as many, because I know I can help in this space. I know I can help with the athletic departments. I can help with sponsors. I've done it all, right? And so I'm just glad at my age I'm able to have the opportunity to be a part and help and do whatever I can to make this great college sports and football, keep it great, because the rest of the world doesn't have what we have in college sports, and it's something we don't want to mess up.
That's right. The passion,
you don't want to mess it up.
Emotional investment of the fans is so key. I mean,
right.
Chris Del Conte says, "I'm in the passion business."
He is.
Yep. And that's think about that for a second, and it totally makes sense. Britt, we will definitely be in touch, my friend. I'm excited for you, and we really appreciate the time. Again, it's monsterfanclub.net, and it's here, folks. It is it's moving fast, and it's moving furious, and it benefits the student athletes. So stay in touch with Brit, because he's doing an unbelievable job of explaining everything on his Twitter at Brit, Britt Hager 6:0. Of course, he wore that number 60 like Tommy Nobis at Texas, and deservedly so, the all-time leading tackler in Texas football history. Brit, thanks so much, my man. And like I said, we'll be in touch. And for Britt Hager, I am Chip Brown. Thanks, everybody, for listening into this episode of the Flagship Podcast. Until next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com. Stay safe and keep the faith.